Welcome everyone to The Explainer. Today, we're decoding a seriously fascinating philosophical lecture on workplace relationships. If you've ever felt completely drained by your colleagues, or, felt like your absolute best intentions as a leader somehow totally backfired on you, well, you are in the right place. We're gonna unpack a structured, deeply insightful framework from our source material that literally rethinks the whole shebang: how we interact, how we give favors, and how we set boundaries at work.
Okay, let's dive into this. Why is it that when we try our absolute hardest to be welcoming, generous, and endlessly helpful to a new subordinate, it so often leads to a toxic dynamic? You know the feeling, right? Giving way too much too soon actually creates an environment where subordinates begin to expect the world and eventually they kind of try to control the relationship. It's a super relatable paradox. Our genuine desire to just be the good boss or the nice colleague actually ends up planting the seeds of our own workplace misery.
So, how do we fix it? Here's our roadmap. We're going to quickly cover wise boundary setting, the side effects of excessive favors, the 3-7 law of nature, proper distribution and pacing, and finally, the contradiction of forced apologies. Starting with number 1, wise boundary setting. The source points out a pretty stark contrast between a wise and an unwise professional. The unwise person basically accepts every single request, blindly giving away their time and energy without any limits, usually because they think this makes them a good colleague. But a truly wise person, they know exactly how and, more importantly, when to draw a firm line. Look, rejecting excessive favors or politely saying no isn't being mean. Actually, scratch that. It's not just not mean. It's absolutely crucial. It's structurally necessary so others don't unwittingly trespass on your goodwill. You simply have to protect your energy to remain effective.
Moving right along to Section 2, the side effects of excessive favors.
Let's move to and see how this builds chronologically. It always starts at step 1 with pure intentions. Maybe you just hired someone, you're eager for a new ally, and you really want them to feel welcome. So you inevitably move to step 2, providing overflowing favor, giving them all your time, your resources, your help. But here is the trap. Step 3 shows that this overflow inevitably generates greed. The subordinate gets totally used to this unnatural level of support. So when you inevitably have to pull back or, heaven forbid, try to actually manage them, they rebel. And that leads us straight off a cliff to step 4, where the relationship just completely breaks down.
I absolutely love how the lecture frames this. Think of it through this brilliant metaphor directly from the text. If you feed someone expensive beef right from the start, they will reject normal food later. It's kind of funny, but wow, it is profoundly true. If you spoil a subordinate or a colleague with 100% of your effort and constant praise from day one, you establish a totally unsustainable baseline. When the time comes for them to do the normal work independently, they're going to feel slighted and resist.
Okay, this brings us to the real meat of the lecture. Section 3, the 3-7 law of nature.
So what is the 3-7 law? Well, it's a fundamental philosophical framework for human interactions. At its core, this law suggests that your initial support, resources, and energy shouldn't just be dumped onto a new relationship all at once. Instead, they need to be metered out, starting at a very strict limit and increasing only organically as time and mutual trust allow.
And the strict limit the framework suggests is exactly 30%. 30%! When you first meet a new employee or form a new professional relationship, you should cap your initial help and energy at exactly 30% of your total capacity. Absolutely do not give them the full 100% of your effort right out of the gate.
Now, what's really interesting about this slide is that other slice of the pie. If you're only giving 30% of your energy to direct help, where on earth does the other 70% go? Well, that 70% must be spent on active observation and pacing. You are intentionally holding back so you can watch, listen, and truly understand who this new person is. You're using that energy to evaluate their character, their work ethic, and their reliability before you overcommit yourself to them.
Which naturally leads us to Section 4, proper distribution and pacing.
Let's look at how this plays out chronologically. On day 1, your primary job is just to observe, without heavily intervening. You don't know this person yet, so blindly helping them is frankly premature. By month 1, as you begin to understand their work style, you provide that foundational 30% support based on the initial trust you've built. And then, looking way ahead to month 6 and beyond, you only gradually increase your support as mutual understanding genuinely grows. Holding back initially is literally the only way to allow a healthy dynamic to form.
The logical outcomes of both approaches are like night and day.
If your action is giving 100% upfront, the result is a subordinate who feels entitled, always expects more, and ultimately rebels when you try to guide or control them later. However, if you meter your help at that 30% mark, the result is sustainable growth. Because you paced yourself, the relationship is built on mutual respect and genuine appreciation for the help you do provide.
All right, our final section, Section 5, the contradiction of forced apologies.
Here is a bold, counterintuitive piece of advice from the source. Artificial actions create contradictions. When you make a mistake or have a clash with a subordinate, our modern instinct is to rush right in and force an apology to quickly smooth things over, right? But forcing an awkward, artificial apology when emotions are running high doesn't actually fix the root of the problem. It just creates an uncomfortable contradiction that actually damages the dynamic even further.
So instead of rushing to say I'm sorry, the source suggests these actionable steps. First, do not force apologies, period. Second, take that energy and reflect internally on your mistakes. Really understand what you did wrong in your own mind. Third, trust natural timing to present a new opportunity to interact. And finally, allow sincere behavioral shifts to mend the bond. The philosophy here is that genuine internal reflection organically changes your energy and your demeanor. The other person will eventually sense this authentic shift, which is honestly far more powerful than forced words.
And this brilliantly illustrates the choice you have to make. A forced apology is kind of like putting tape on a broken vase. It might seem like a quick fix, but it usually creates awkwardness and worsens the underlying dynamic because it just lacks the weight of true change. Internal reflection, on the other hand, relies on time and nature. By quietly correcting your own behavior, you allow the bond to mend naturally and, more importantly, sustainably.
I want to actually slow down for a second here, because this is a truly profound thought to take away from the lecture. Trust the natural flow of relationships. Sincerity, over time, repairs what words cannot. It's such a powerful reminder that we don't actually have to micromanage every single emotion or instantly fix every uncomfortable moment. Sometimes, stepping back, observing that 3-7 law, and just trusting the natural progression of time is the most active and effective form of leadership there is.
Well, we've covered a ton of ground today, from cutting off the expensive beef of overgiving, to applying the 30% rule, to completely rethinking how we apologize. So I'm going to leave you with this final provocative question to consider. Knowing what you know now about the 3-7 law and the hidden dangers of overflowing favors, how will you adjust your pacing and boundaries at work tomorrow? Think about who you might be overserving right now and where you might need to reclaim that 70% for observation. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer, and I really hope this structural approach brings some immense clarity to your professional life.